Hello and welcome back. Before we get to part 2, Real Talk, please allow us to fulfill our capitalistic duty and plug our Patreon, the Contrarian Supplements.
That's right. For a small fee, you too can help the Contrarians rage on.
We have tiers ranging from just $1 to $10. It all depends on how much content you can handle.
Starting at $1, it's the Travoltis tier, which gets you access to new bonus episodes focusing on a new movie every month, as well as access to the patron chat. Join other patrons in making fun of our opinions.
Moving up to $3 is the Winonis tier, which unlocks access to our pre-recording notes, our video reviews, and our spin-off show, Contrarians After Hours.
That's a more laid-back space where we talk about other things we've been watching, reading, playing, thinking about. Sometimes it's related to the movies being covered in the main feed, but it usually isn't.
If you want to be part of those patrons who help us shape the show by telling us which movies to tackle, that's when you sign up for the $5 tier, the Embries, and the $10, the Gads.
Finally, all supplement subscribers, regardless of the tier, get access to our archive of special patron projects. Head over to patreon.com/contrarianprime now to join.
Be sure to listen through the end of the episode to find out what's coming up to the Contrarian Supplements this month. Now, it's time for some Real Talk.
I have never had so much as now. All my life I've been alone. Many times I faced my death with no one to know. I would look into the huts and the tents of others in the coldest dark, and I would see figures holding each other in the night. But I always passed by. You and I, we have warmth. That's so hard to find in this world. Please, let someone else pass by in the night. Let us take the world by the throat and make it give us what we desire.
Julio, what is your familiarity with the Conan the Barbarian character? It was just like comic books, and we talked about the video games that were kind of mimicking the idea of Conan. It's just like a character, not unlike, Bugs Bunny or something, that I don't remember a time where I didn't have like a vague familiarity with Conan. But not necessarily the Arnold Schwarzenegger iteration. It's something I'm aware of, but is that similar for you? Kind of like, G.I. Joe or something. Did you just know about the Conan character?
Yeah, I mean, there was a stretch of time where I was kind of consistently following his late night show, but I didn't stick around for too long.
All right. I was wondering how long it was going to take.
I've read some Conan comics. When I was a kid, I remember having a couple of them. And then when I was much older, I think it was after I'd moved here to the States, there was a relaunch that might have been, I don't know if they were Marvel, but it was one of my favorite writers, Kurt Busiek. He was writing it, and he was writing the new Conan series. And I remember buying the first 2 collections. So I don't know, I might still have them. But his Conan, and I'm assuming that this applies to most iterations of Conan, was a lot smarter, I think, a lot more charismatic than the character that's portrayed here in this movie. And I don't know if that's something to do with the limitations of casting Arnold at that time, or if it's just the way that they wanted the movie to be to begin with. But in my mind, I remember thinking Conan was just this brute warrior at first, and then later, when I was much older and I read the more recent comics, I was like, oh no, this dude is actually, he's resourceful and he's quick-witted and all that stuff. The version that I read in the later comics, I'm like, I can see how maybe he becomes a king, down the line. But that was it. I mean, I wasn't like a big fan or anything. I definitely like those Conan collections that I bought, mainly because Busiek is a good writer, and I remember the art was good. But then I think he left the series, and then I never felt the need to continue checking it out. So that was it. Man, I hope I still have them, because now I'm curious to check them out again, just because it's relevant to what we're saying, what we're talking about here. Did you read any of the comics?
I did when I was a kid. Not any that I have like strong memories of, like you were just relaying there. I remember I remember one, the cover of it is coming to me. It was like orange and had like vegetation on it and shit. But I remember having some in my collection as a young lad.
When you see Schwarzenegger in this movie, do you think Conan, does it look like a good translation?
I mean, he's godlike, and that's kind of the whole thing with, I'm looking at it now. Okay, I remember I had this Marvel Conan the Barbarian one that he's like standing on top of a pile of soldiers. So that was the whole thing with Arnold. I mean, he was a god, and you look at him in this movie, and this was also before the days of we've learned conclusively that muscles don't mean you're a badass and can kick someone's ass or anything like that. But in 1982, there was still a bit of the public wiring was that way. And so, people probably thought he was a fucking slayer and, could go out there and fight his own battles if he needed to. Not to discredit Arnold. I'm sure this version of him could kick my ass, but absolutely. I mean, look, I'm looking at a picture of him right now. He's got the fucking abs and the pecs and his arms, and he looks like an action figure. He was like he was almost the size of Hulk Hogan, but he was actually like cut. And yes, Arnold, his inspirations, or some of his inspirations as a young man, wanting to achieve the physical perfection that he did, were Bruno Sammartino and superstar Billy Graham and the professional wrestlers of that time. And he certainly had a physique that would put Bruno to shame, but definitely up there with the superstar Billy Graham. And so absolutely. When I think of the idea of Conan and what he's supposed to look like, this represented on film, this works for me. I obviously am not close enough to I'm thinking of the guy who was the big Conan the Barbarian buff in his friend group in 1982. That was like, this pretty boy isn't it, man. This isn't what Conan's supposed to be.
I need my Conan to be able to string a few more sentences together before they could truly accept him as a true adaptation. This is obviously before Terminator, but after he had that, is that documentary? What is that? Like that big movie that he has?
Pumping Iron?
Is that a documentary or is it fiction?
Yeah. That's a documentary.
Okay.
Oh, it's a docudrama, but he plays himself in that.
Okay. And that's his introduction to movies, right?
Well, he had Hercules in New York, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that movie.
No.
Okay. So
is he Hercules?
He is Hercules in New York. And then, as covered on The Contrarians, he had a small part in The Long Goodbye.
Of course. Yes.
And then he was in a film called Stay Hungry, which he played Joe Santo in that. So he had those three, dipping the toe in the water, and then there was Pumping Iron. And you're exactly right. That's what would have been the thing that people were like, God damn, look at this guy.
Is it surprising that they didn't write him off after Conan? Because you're right. He has, he looks the part, and this is me being very harsh on him, because I think that ultimately, to the extent of the movie works or doesn't work, like it's not.
Brother, Gal Gadget's still getting bookings, so I don't want to hear this.
Yes, okay, but we're. I'm not going to say that we've lowered the standards, but like back then, he has two things going for him, or rather, okay, at the time, would you agree that he has what he has going for him is the physique and I guess maybe the work ethic, right? But you look at him in Conan, you're like, I don't know that this dude has a future as an actor. You definitely wouldn't predict what's going to happen to his career over the next few decades.
That is fair. In his career, in his life, I don't think anyone watching this goes, that guy is going to be the governor of California.
He's going to be iconic to multiple generations.
Hello, everybody. I want to talk to you today about the rising hate and anti-Semitism we've seen all over the world.
Things happened pretty fast, Julio. So the important thing to keep in mind with this is it was a movie made in the 80s that made money. So immediately that means a sequel is going to be made. After Conan the Destroyer, all right, so Conan the Destroyer came out on June 29th of 1984. And then in October of that same year, a little ditty known as The Terminator came out, which obviously changed the fortunes of one Arnold Schwarzenegger forever. That movie certainly changed his life. I think it's interesting what you're proposing here, because let's say Terminator doesn't exist, but he still makes Commando.
Right.
So he goes Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer, Commando. And yeah, you don't know. You wonder if he like kind of runs out of steam there. Because we joke about it, but it is. The thing in the Terminator, what is so perfect is because Arnold is, at that point in time, Arnold became a great actor in his own right. And I've been very complimentary of some of the things he did later in his career, like specifically, what's that? Maggie? Is that what it's called? Yeah. I think he's quite great in that. And, Last Action Hero is a movie we did. And I think he's really good in that. And True Lies is. So, yes, you get my point. Now, at this point in time, though, he's very stiff. And kind of spoilers, this movie, its failing is that Arnold is just kind of like, okay, he's big and jacked. And yeah, I understand he's got like a magnetic quality to him, but man, he's really bad at reading lines here.
Yeah.
So James Cameron takes this dude who looks like if you would sculpt a movie star out of granite, it would be Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then tells him to act like a robot and gives him a few lines. And then he has some of the most quoted, memorable, iconic, use whatever phrase you want, lines in the history of the medium of film. And then so for a while, it doesn't really matter if he's a good actor or not. And you and I have had we've had conversations with varying degrees of appreciation for things like Predator and Total Recall. Unfortunately, you don't agree that Terminator 2 is the greatest film ever made, but
I don't have a problem with Arnold's performance in it.
I can't remember. Last Action Hero, you weren't as crazy about it as I was. Was Arnold's performance part of it?
No. I think that he's fine. He's doing what they ask him to do, and sometimes that doesn't make sense. But it's not his problem. It's Shane Black's problem and John McTiernan's.
Fair enough. So I say all that to be in a really roundabout way of, I think that's an interesting point that you bring up there. James Cameron, once again, saving lives.
I think you nailed it in a way too, because it made money. So in a way, it just doesn't matter, right? If the movie makes money, then you're going to bring him back, because you can't have a Conan sequel without Schwarzenegger, or it would be very difficult. So the box office success bought him some time. And
the Destroyer didn't do quite as good as the Barbarian, but it still made some money. Looks like it was a hit on the rental market. So I think sometimes this may get lost in the story of Arnold. I think sometimes when I hear people tell his tale, it's pumping iron, then he got the casting in the Terminator, and off to the races we go. This is a very significant layover for this young man, because he did a couple other things in between this and Pumping Iron, but obviously nothing that would be a leading role. And these are two films that are literally built around him.
Oh, he's not the lead in Hercules in New York?
Okay, yeah. It stars Arnold Schwarzenegger in his acting debut as the eponymous divine hero who engages in escapades after traveling to New York City. I remember it being quite bad.
As delightful as Arnold escapades sound, I'd probably skip it.
So before we go any further into this, because we have a lot to talk about that's not just Arnold, Julio, do you have some rotten quotes for us?
Yeah, some rotten quotes, and Alex, you will not be surprised to find out that they call out Arnold a couple times. So let's start with Vincent Canby from the New York Times, who says, Conan the Barbarian is an extremely long, frequently incoherent, ineptly staged adventure fantasy set in a prehistoric past. Did you get that it was the past, or did you at any point think that maybe it was a post-apocalyptic future?
No, it was the past.
Why? Because they have guns?
Correct. There wasn't any portraits of Reagan up on the wall.
I read somewhere that the original Oliver Stone treatment was set in the future. And then John Milius was like, no, it's a lot cheaper if we just made it. If you just make it like it's the past. Next, Josh Larson from Larson on Film says, ironically undone by its star, a preening peacock eager to sow the seeds of self-parody with a well-placed camel punch.
My God.
Is Arnold preening in this movie? I don't think so.
The camel punch is insane. I rewound it like twice. I was like, what?
Can you believe that? Huh?
But does he strike you as a cocky performer in this movie?
No, he strikes me as someone who's actually like trying to find confidence.
Yeah, me too. I don't see him as a preening peacock. That seems a mislabel. Matt Brunson from Film Frenzy says, a wooden Arnie is not yet seasoned enough to work up the charisma that would serve him well in later roles. And then Richard Friedman from Newhouse News Service says, in the ongoing sword and sorcery sweepstakes, while Conan is marginally less offensive because it is less pretentious than Excalibur, it's nowhere near as good as Dragon Slayer. Alex, you probably heard of Excalibur, right?
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of Dragon Slayer? I had to look it up because I hadn't. It says 1981 American dark fantasy film.
No,
stars
yeah,
Peter McNichol.
I'm not familiar with this. Yeah, I'm familiar with Excalibur, though.
Well, you look at the poster for Dragon Slayer and it looks like, oh, yeah, that looks like a fantasy movie from the 80s.
Same genre, yeah.
Excalibur, I've never seen. I've always been curious about it. I know it's like long. Doesn't surprise me that some people may accuse it of being pretentious. Would you say Conan the Barbarian is pretentious, Alex?
No.
So what it just happens to be paced like a movie that would be pretentious, but it isn't.
Yeah, I could see that. The pacing is a huge issue. To me, I would put that more on the side of like undisciplined filmmaking than pretension. But I see the train of thought, though.
I think that, there were more quotes that would call Arnold out for his performance. And then some that would criticize the pacing of the movie and so on. But this is a very, this genre, especially in the 80s, I kind of feel like that's the way that you made fantasy movies,
Uh-huh.
Like we had fun comparing it to The Lord of the Rings and Contrarian's Corner, but that was intentionally missing the point that, well, audiences in the early 2000s were ready for a different kind of fantasy movie. And I think that in the 80s, part of the fun of creating a fantasy world was having those sweeping shots where you got to see all the sets and really taking your time in the locations and showing you, like, the opening of this movie is just them forging a sword. And, I think that kind of came with the territory in the 80s. So I was trying really hard when I was watching this to keep that in mind, to kind of give that to the movie and not try not to judge it as if it was a movie made in the 90s, where I would expect things to move a little quicker and maybe be in a little less awe of what they're making, Like, I think it's great that it's like a practical set and that there's all these, everything is happening there. They're really riding those horses, and God, I really hope that he didn't punch that camel, but everything is real. I think so at the time, you just kind of took the time to luxuriate in what you had created, but we just don't do that now because as an audience, I think that we just want things to move a little faster. I don't know. What do you think? You're not, I think you're even less of a fantasy kind of person than I am. I mean, I am a fantasy person, and I don't think that you are, right? Like this is not your genre, the like sword and sandals, as they call it, unless it's Gladiator.
A lot of my adoration for Gladiator has grown just to spite you, but yeah, typically not. The first thing I want to say, just backing up to a point, visually, this movie is stunning. It looks incredible. I mean, some of the effects, yes, may have aged kind of comedically, but I mean, the sets, the locations, the use of real animals and all that shit. Yeah, it's the costuming, all of it. Visually a stunning film. As far as fantasy movies go, you're right. I've, a lot of people wouldn't understand like a difference between a Lord of the Rings and a Star Wars, but like to me, it's like, whoa. One of those is fantasy, one of them science fiction, because you all know I love me some Star Wars and Lord of the Rings movies. So here's what I typically fall in with fantasy movies if I enjoy them. I watched them one time and I'm glad that I did. I went to the midnight of Two Towers, I remember, yeah, and like having a ball. And that's the last time I watched it, when I was in high school. So it's not a genre that I frequent often. So a movie like this, like I said, I remember from being on TV as a kid, but at the age and the point in my life I am now, this isn't something I would have probably ever watched if it hadn't been for the request that we got here. So yeah, it's typically not where I hang my hat.
So then when you sit down to watch Sword and Sandals epic starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm guessing there was trepidation. You see the runtime is 2 hours and 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Well, like I mentioned, Julio, I ran into an issue where I had to sync up with you to make sure we were watching the right one, because my YouTube TV version of this was 1 hour and 45 minutes. And I was like, well, that's not right.
What?
But there's also other versions of it on the internet that, so there's, let me see. I was reading about this earlier. Conan the Barbarian has been released in several different versions on home video. In addition to the 126-minute theatrical print, Universal distributed the film in a 115-minute and 123-minute cut on VHS in the 80s. A slightly extended version was created for the film's special edition DVD in 2000, featuring 5 minutes of additional footage for a total runtime of 131 minutes. The same version was later released on Blu-ray. The version on Amazon Prime, however, is the 126-minute U.S. theatrical cut. So that settles that. But I did, on some other places that had it streaming, it varied in runtime. So I was just like, Julio, where are you watching this? Make sure we watch the same thing.
Well, I'm glad that we did the official.
Yes, we did. I don't know what the fuck the hour and 45-minute version was. But anyway, it's become part of my brand, I guess. If a movie's over 90 minutes, then I recoil in terror. But I saw the runtime. I was like, all right, let's see what happens here. You know, he's going to lose his family. Then he's going to find himself. Then he's going to go after the bad guy, which is what happens. But it's paced to me, it's kind of asking of its viewer to stick with it. It does try really hard to, when it does have action sequences or moments of like, you know, visual appeal, it does milk it in a way that's like, yeah, this might have been kind of cool for the time. But unfortunately now we live, I've seen Avatar. And so let's kind of speed it up.
Do you feel that the action sequences go on for too long?
No, that's kind of the thing. I think there's too much time in between them. And there's like, it's not like one of those things too that could be like, there's need to cut back the dialogue, because it's just like there's a lot of meandering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I almost want to say like I could have used more meandering if it was fun. The problem is that the meandering is not, there's not a whole lot to it. But I think at the core, I like once they become a trio, right? Conan meets up with the two thieves. I kind of wanted the movie to just be about their adventures.
Exactly. There's really no sense of like wonder or adventure. Like, I know in the end he was going to kill James Earl Jones, but I was just kind of hoping for a bit more before we got there.
Yeah, they get split apart, very quickly, and that was one of my big realizations. Right, one, I was not getting a transcorder. Like my sense of joy when I realized that Conan was getting a sidekick, and then my sense of despair when I realized that Conan was striking out of his own again. I was like, no, please no. I just think it's more fun, when he has those characters to play off of. And I think especially the actress that plays Valeria, I think she's good. I think she has.
She knows what the role is.
Two fools who laugh at death. Do you know what horrors lie beyond that wall?
No.
Then you go first.
Yes, yeah, and so she can sell that she's a badass. She's obviously a better actress, a better actor, than Arnold. So she can really sell you the dramatic scenes. I buy her character. I like, yes, it kind of sucks that she's mostly defined by the fact that she's in love with him, and she wants to settle, and he doesn't. But still, I bought the performance, and so I was happy whenever she was around, and I thought that she had the potential to make him a more interesting character. Doesn't really, happen because they like I said, they get split, and then shortly after they get reunited, she dies. So, and that was the one thing I remember, by the way, from watching it on TV all those years ago. Well, I kind of remember it. I remember that she died. I didn't remember how. And then I remembered that in my mind, he had a vision of her in the middle of a fight. And that vision kind of like gave him a second wind and he won the fight. Not exactly what happens here. Instead, she literally shows up, comes down from heaven or whatever and saves him. But what I also remember was that it was not a climatic fight. I remember feeling it back when I was a kid, and I felt it again today. I was like, man, you had this pretty out there plot development where you're going to have a dead warrior come back looking like supernatural entity, and you're going to waste it when he's fighting some dude that doesn't even have a name. I go, why wouldn't you do it when, he's fighting the big bad? And I felt that way too this time. I was like, that was kind of cool, but
there is really no final battle, which is kind of like, that was.
Yeah. Does this movie become better, Alex, if we just have a sword fight between James Earl Jones and Conan at the end?
On one hand, I do like that idea of he finally gets to him. He just beats the fuck out of him. Like, he was just running from him the whole time and he was a fraud and all that. So I can appreciate that. Yeah, I could see it either way. I don't think it saves the movie, though.
I am going to double down on what I said in Concerns Corner. If you're going to have him display the powers that he does earlier in the movie, it's very silly to not give us that at the end. I'm like, he turned into a giant snake. I want a giant snake at the end. I mean, that is just, I get that they're going for something else.
Like fucking Jafar.
Yeah. You can't accuse them of stealing from Aladdin because Aladdin hadn't happened yet. So if anything, I guess the people from Disney, they're like, oh, remember that movie Conan the Barbarian? How about we give people what they want? Big fight with a giant snake. I get what they were going for, right? It's just more of a psychological confrontation at the end. And it's probably, I don't know, is it the best acting that Arnold does when he's here like face to face with James Earl Jones at the end? And he's trying to mind fuck him, calling him his son and all that stuff. Because I felt that he was okay.
Yeah, it's definitely the most that he gives in this.
Yeah, but it's still just not as satisfying. I think that there's somebody in the quotes called it incoherent, and that's where like my brain starts breaking down the plot and like the inconsistencies. I'm like, how easy is it to sneak up on James Earl Jones? Because it happens like 3 times in the movie, right? The first time when they steal the gems, then when 4 times, because then when Arnold sneaks in, by himself, pretending to be a priest, granted, he gets caught in that one. Then again, when they're wearing camo and they sneak in to steal the princess. And then here at the end, by himself, he just goes up the steps and shows up right behind James Earl Jones. It was like, there's no security.
For a guy who's created his own cult, you'd think he'd have like some security guards.
Right. Or, whenever Arnold shows up there should be some reaction, people trying to stop him. I don't know. I think that, I just wanted something more action-packed, and the movie was intent on giving us an intellectual confrontation, intellectual ending. And it just didn't quite work, because I don't think that there's a whole lot to this version of Conan, but what there is how much it relishes its violence. So I was like, the ending should be just about the violence then. And I guess it is, right? The way he chops James Earl Jones's head is, as you rightfully called out, it's pretty brutal. But I guess I just wanted a big fight.
What will your world be without me? My son.
So now getting into a little bit more of the behind the scenes on this, John Milius expressed interest in directing a film about Conan in 1978 after completing filming of Big Wednesday. He had long been an admirer of films like 1958's The Vikings. He had approached the studio about doing it, but discussions kind of fell through. Oliver Stone joined the project after Paramount offered to fund the film's initial $2.5 million budget if a, quote, named screenwriter was on the team. After securing Stone's services, Pressman, is that the executive producer on this, Edward R. Pressman, and he approached Frank Frazetta to be a visual consultant but failed to come to terms. The producer then engaged Ron Cobb, who had just completed set design on Alien. Cobb made a series of paintings and drawings for Pressman before leaving to join Milius on another project. The estimates to realize Stone's finished script ran $40 million. They could not convince the studio to finance their project. The production company was in financial difficulties, and in order to keep afloat, he borrowed Pressman, this is, borrowed money from the bank. The failure to find a suitable director was also a problem for the project. Stone and Joe Alves, who was the second unit director on Jaws 2, were considered as possible co-directors, but Pressman said it was a pretty crazy idea and they didn't get anywhere with it. Oliver Stone said he asked Ridley Scott, who had just finished directing Alien, to take up the task, but he rejected it. Ralph Baskey was also in talks to direct. Cobb showed Milius's work for Conan and Stone's script, which, according to him, reignited Milius's interest. The director contacted Pressman, and they came to an agreement. Milius would direct the film if he were allowed to modify the script. He was known in the film industry for his macho screenplays for Dirty Harry and Magnum Force. He was, however, contracted to direct his next film for Dino De Laurentiis, an influential producer in the fantasy film industry. Milius raised the idea of taking on Conan with De Laurentiis, and after a year of negotiations, Pressman and De Laurentiis agreed to co-produce. De Laurentiis took over the financing and production, and Pressman gave up all claims to the film's profits, though he retained approval over final changes to the script, cast, and director. Dino assigned the responsibility for production to his daughter, Rafaela. Milius was formally appointed as the director in early 1979. Cobb was named as production design. De Laurentiis convinced Universal Studios to become the film's distributor in North America. The studio contributed to the production budget of $17.5 million and prepared $12 million to advertise the film. So not really production hell. It was just getting this thing off the ground, but it seems like a lot of people were interested in it and making it happen. And with good cause, and ended up making money.
I think it's funny to think of a time when Oliver Stone would be involved in something like this.
No shit.
Right? Like, he's become known mainly as the guy that makes movies about political conspiracies and historical figures. And I would never imagine that he was a co-writer on Conan.
It is an interesting little blip.
I mean, but he was already a established filmmaker by now, right? Am I or not?
Blip is the wrong word. Yeah, blip might have been the wrong word. I think it was more of just like, it's an interesting little asterisk, or a did you know, I guess. Hey, you know that Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Guess who wrote that? So Oliver Stone hadn't really done much up until this point. His debut film Seizure was in 1974. He wrote Midnight Express in 1978 and wrote and directed The Hand, which was in 1981. And was a writer on this, and after this he would pen Scarface.
Okay, so he was still finding his way maybe into...
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he's going to do a Conan remake now. It's like, I'm not a big Conan fan. I just did what I had to do because I needed the paycheck.
Did what I had to do to get by. Should surprise no one to learn that Ed Pressman and some of the others involved watched Pumping Iron and agreed that Arnold Schwarzenegger was the perfect role for Conan due to his huge muscular frame. So they based it just solely on, you know, the visual appeal, which, again, people that look like Arnold Schwarzenegger don't come along every day. So you got to strike while the iron's hot, or in this case, the sword, I guess. A little bit behind the scenes there. There was a lot of practical effects, which I appreciated. So it is a movie in all that sense. And Julio, what do you make of this? I feel like I've done a lot of the talking so far about pacing and acting and whatnot. And I know we both agree that Arnold isn't where it's at necessarily from an acting perspective in this, but just I guess your base level thoughts on Conan the Barbarian.
I can appreciate it as an object of its time, I guess. You know, if I'm in the right mood, I can just sit down and let this play in the background. And like I said, I have to make the conscious decision to not pass judgment on how slow it is and how it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Then if I make that extra effort, I find myself appreciating the production side of it. I think it's the biggest problem, so to speak, but also maybe the biggest talking point is just Arnold's performance. And so I think it's an important part of film history because of that. I don't think he's good. I think that he has the looks and that, but that doesn't carry the movie for me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What carries the movie? I mean, I think James Earl Jones is good, but he's not in the movie enough. You know, he has a couple big moments and then that's it. I think it's just like a flawed movie. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to like sound like I'm dismissing the taste from audiences, like audiences' taste in the 80s, you know, but I think that's when I watch this movie and I'm like, yeah, this was a big hit in the 80s. I'm like, I guess, yeah, that makes sense because they were a little more in awe of the production side of it. You could just put Conan as a barbarian, as a big hulking hero, and you give it enough pizzazz visually, and then that's enough for it to be a big hit. But I don't know, I'm curious about the Jason Momoa version, and just to think of
that makes one of us.
Well, because I think Momoa is very charismatic, assuming that that's not, you know, his Conan is not like Arnold's Conan, where they grab him like before he actually knows what to do in front of the camera. And I think that the character and the setting, they have potential to have like interesting stories. I mean, I like that setting, like the early prehistoric adventures, and I like the world that it has magic, you know, and this is just, they didn't get the formula right. Like there's a couple moments where the magic is just so in your face, right? Like he has sex with the witch, and the witch makes a big production number, and then there's the big sequence where they bring him back to life, and that's also very demonic. And then, of course, James Earl Jones turns into a snake, but then there's a lot of it that is just very mundane, and it's just people with swords fighting. And I think that there's probably a better way of melding these things together, so it feels like it's all happening in the same world. You know, like the appearance of Valeria at the end, you know, it kind of like, it makes sense, but it also kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So,
because there really hasn't been any type of there's not really been any element like that up until that point in the movie.
Yeah, I think that maybe if you just weaved the magic side of it more throughout the story, then maybe it would just be stronger. You know, it would just make the story stronger as it goes on.
You will find what you want in Zamora. Oh.
It works in the sense that I didn't hate watching it, but the entire time I'm thinking, this is not. You know what I mean?
High
Like,
praise. Yeah.
I know. Well, there are movies that we've done where I was like, oh God, please end. It's not here. Like I didn't feel the length, right? I felt the pacing, and the entire time I kept wishing that it was better, right? I wanted a better performance from Conan. I wanted the characters I like to be around more. I wanted the story to make more sense, and none of that happened. So, you know, it was over. I think that the final shot is amazing. The Arnold sitting there as the king, you know, in some far future. But I wish that the movie leading there had been a little more like that. I could really say, oh yeah, you know, by the end of the movie, I can see how this guy might someday become a powerful, legendary ruler. But instead, I'm like, I can't tell you anything about Conan by the end of the movie. I just know that he was seeking revenge for the death of his mother, the murder of his mother, and he got it. And then that's it. Like, do you know how he feels at the end after he's killed James Earl Jones and set all these people free? Like, what happens to those people? They just wander off back to their villages. I don't know. I think it's part of. That's what I was asking you at the beginning. Is it that the movie, like the filmmakers, were stuck with this performance, so they're like, all right, we can't give Conan this, you know, too much in the way of depth because Schwarzenegger's not going to be able to do it. So we got to focus on just the badass side of it, the fights and all that stuff. Or is it that John Milius and Oliver Stone's take on Conan is just very one-dimensional? I was like, no, it's just this dude that is driven by revenge and kills people, and then that's it. You know, there's not a whole lot of anything. Like, why the fuck are you opening with a Nisha quote if you're not really going to tell me anything about the world by the end? You know, what kind of postering is that? Right? Like the movie, it opens by saying, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. So I guess Conan is stronger at the end of the movie than he was at the beginning of the movie. That is such a like basic thing to say. I don't know. I guess what I'm coming to terms with, Alex, is that I wanted a more complex Conan story. That's what I wanted. Yeah,
it's definitely void of any real feeling or thought that way, because it's just guy killed his parents. He's going to do what he can to find the guy, you know? I guess because of that, because I knew there wasn't going to be too much in the way of intellect, that I was kind of bummed that there wasn't some big grandiose finale and he just lobs off old man Myrtle's head.
That's the thing. Yeah, right. If you're not going to be complex in your message, at least be absolutely spectacular. And I guess this was absolutely spectacular back in the 80s, but today it leaves me a little cold.
It does. I need to stress again, it is visually stunning in most regards, because there is also a story of intellect and like an interesting one of finally getting to your final boss and just being able to walk right over him. That's a story that happens in wrestling from time to time that I love. I've always been a big fan of it. The guy who finally gets his hands on his arch nemesis and then just beats the shit out of him. And it's not a fight. It's just like a mauling. But there's a way to tell that story in an interesting way. And here it's just kind of like, really? He could have become a snake. Why didn't he shoot him with a snake arrow?
So that's the thing, right? Here we go. This is where the movie, I guess, needed to sell me more on the conflict or whatever, because it's James Earl Jones tells him, you're basically my son because I created you. When I killed your parents and burdened you with this tragedy, I set you on the path that turned you into the person you are now. Your thirst for revenge turned you into this person. And Conan hesitates, right? He seems like he's pondering what he's told him, and then he decides, fuck it, I don't care, I'm going to kill you anyway. I think that maybe if I had more insight into what makes Conan tick throughout the movie, then this part would have felt a little more important. I would have been a little more captivated. But it never even crossed my mind that there was a chance that James Earl Jones was going to be able to talk him out of not killing him. So I was like, all right, keep going. I'm going to make a Star Wars joke. That's what I'm taking out of this.
Who gave you the will to live? I am the wellspring from which you flow.
I did, of course, just tie this to wrestling, and because there are other tie-ins to wrestling, a very quizzical one I found when doing a little bit of research on our director, John Milius here, and his Wikipedia page has a section about his influence. Let's see. Yeah, the subsection titled Influence has an entry that says Triple H, retired WWE wrestler and current head of creative for WWE, cites Milius as an inspiration in how to tell a compelling story within a wrestling match without having to rely on over-the-top action. As he stated, Milius didn't rely on action in his work to tell a compelling story to the audience. All right, Paul, whatever you have to tell yourself to make yourself feel on par. This one, if true, I'm shocked I wasn't aware of already. Milius was also instrumental during the startup of the Ultimate Fighting Championship organization, as it was his idea to use an octagon-shaped ring.
What?
And his association with UFC helped provide interest in investors in the startup. Well, it's referenced here. It's an article from 2008. MMAmemories.com. Yeah, I'm going to have to look further into that because, again, if that was true, it could be. And that could just be an insane fact that I was unaware of. But Triple H is relevant to this discussion, though, as he is a fucking mark. And he has always been a mark for Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've told the story before on here about the WrestleMania where Paul had the Terminator entrance, and then Arnold said, it's time to play the game. But at WrestleMania 22, in his main event title match against John Cena, this would have been 2006, Triple H came out as Conan the Barbarian. Oh. He came up from under the stage with on a throne, and I'm just going to send you a picture of it, Julio, right now, and anyone out there can just Google Triple H WrestleMania 22. But yeah, as I said, he came out from under the stage in this huge throne and had this whole garb on that was very... Yeah, Julio's seeing it now, and he had his big sledgehammer and a skull on a pike, and it was... So it's something I always think of, Triple H's obsession with Arnold, which I get that too, because he, was a wannabe bodybuilder. Paul, that is, not Arnold, but something to bring up. So the influence of Conan, not just constricted to the world of professional wrestling, but I think Julio and myself, especially in the time period we grew up in, the idea of Conan was kind of everywhere and taken in the form of books, television, movies, obviously. Do we have any big cultural figures like Conan the Barbarian today, Julio? Because I know, and I'm not, it's going to sound like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm not. I know that by and large, the idea of a male specimen is met with pushback these days. You know what I mean? Like, we can't really have someone out there saying this is what a perfect human looks like without people pushing back at that. You know what I mean?
I talk about like in like a pop culture character or like a real life person.
I mean, we have superhero, real life. Who's the closest? I'm trying to think of who in wrestling or combat sports right now has like
Dwayne?
the best physique. Dwayne slimmed down. Did you see him at the Venice Film Festival? He's lost like 70 pounds.
I read that it was for his next role, right?
Yeah, well, that's what he said. Bryan Danielson, I saw an interview with him where someone asked him what he thought. He goes, maybe he just wants to live longer.
Well, you've drooled all over his physique and Pain and Gain.
Brother, you could project that movie on his back in that, dude. Come on. But yeah, I mean, we don't have like, we have superheroes and whatnot. I'm thinking of just like a character in pop culture that would be tantamount to Conan, and I'm kind of blanking on one.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not, I would say not over the past 10, 15 years, right? Because that's not what we're into right now. We're into, costumes and relatability. I don't know. I mean, it just goes hand in hand with we don't make those movies anymore. So, I mean, we stopped, like, specifically, this is like from the 80s. I don't know how that Conan did with, the one with Aquaman, with Momoa. Like, I don't know how it did, but, wasn't there like how about the Hercules with The Rock? Like, was it The Rock that did Hercules?
Yes, which that also didn't do well, if I remember correctly.
So yeah, I think that maybe we're done with that type of hero. That it needs to be more than just like a huge.
I stand corrected. It had $100 million budget and it did $250 million. But if I had to guess, a lot of that wasn't domestic.
It was not enough.
It was not enough to warrant a sequel. I'll tell you that much right now.
Maybe The Rock didn't want to.
Yeah. Well, he was pigeonholed into these roles.
Right. I can't think of a figure like that. Because even when you're thinking of actors that have that physique, they're like interested whenever they go into movies. They're trying to play a different side of it, right? Like Batista, whenever he makes movies, he's not trying to play on the Batista persona as far as like, oh, I'm a big jacked up wrestler. He's trying to be funny or be sensitive. I don't know. I think that the what's considered peak human perfection these days is something more like I don't know, Ryan Gosling or Timothée Chalamet. God.
Yeah, you could be right. I think the age of paying to go just watch hyper masculine dudes do dude shit is it's clearly not what it used to be. So yeah, movies like this, I don't really know if there's a place for them anymore. Be interesting to see if that pendulum ever swings back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, in theory it should, but who knows? We may not make it as a society to where that pendulum swings back. To close down, Alex, have you heard of Red Sonja? I don't think it's an Arnold movie, right? Is he just there like as a cameo? Because he's not playing Red Sonja.
Her courage was forged out of fire. Her power, a gift of the gods. Her destiny, to become a glorious new hero. Red Sonja.
I've never seen it. And I thought that I had heard that Red Sonja had a cameo in this movie, in Conan the Barbarian, and then she got her own spin-off movie. And then Arnold would cameo there. But I'm looking at IMDb, and Arnold's not listed as Conan. He's listed as someone else.
Yeah, he's Lord Calidor.
Yeah.
Looking at the poster, the poster's fucking epic, and it's exactly what we've been talking about.
Yep.
But he's got this huge sword. And, yeah, he's got top billing.
So maybe the two-hander? Man, did they make a movie called Red Sonja, but they made it about the dude?
Oh man, Bridget Nielsen is Red Sonja. Well, hold on.
And then Sandal Bergman, who played Valeria in Conan the Barbarian, is playing Queen Gedren in that movie. So what the fuck is going on?
Is this all some spinoff? What are we doing here?
I don't know. I know that Red Sonja is based on it's a Robert E. Howard character, right? So the same guy that wrote Conan wrote Red Sonja, created Red Sonja. So there's connections there. And just more recently, there was a 2025 Red Sonja movie that I read was pretty bad. I haven't seen it. I haven't even seen the original from the 80s, but I think it went straight to streaming. If I find myself caring enough, step one in the continuing Conan adventure would be watching Conan the Destroyer, just to see if I agree with my young self and I find it better than original Conan. And then watching Red Sonja, because I'm curious about what the hell. I guess they're just trying to be cute. They just cast two people from the original Conan movie as different characters, maybe. I got there, I was reminded of it because I was trying to find out what else Sandal Bergman was in, because I really liked her in this movie, in Conan the Barbarian. So I was trying to see if she was in anything else, and I guess she was in Red Sonja. And that was the thing. I was like, did I misunderstand what was happening? Maybe Valeria is Red Sonja, right? Like once she comes back as a supernatural being, maybe she's Red Sonja. I just got really confused by the whole thing. But no, I guess not. I guess I will know for sure until I watch it. And I don't know, Alex. I talk a big game right now, but who knows when I'll get to it.
For Conan the Destroyer, I knew Andre the Giant was in it. I didn't know it was an uncredited role because there's this famous picture from on the set of him and I think it's Wilt Chamberlain. Like they're both picking up Arnold, and it's just kind of intense to see, how huge you think Arnold is, and Andre just fucking towers over him. But yeah, he has an uncredited role in Conan the Destroyer as the Dagoth monster. So
okay. Now you're increasing the odds that I might watch Conan the Destroyer.
Well, we'll see. Maybe you and I can both circle back to it at some point on in After Hours, discussing our thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's not directed by John Milius, so
it is not.
Might move a little faster.
And it's also not written by Oliver Stone, sadly.
So no Reagan allegories, nothing political in it.
Time will tell.
Where do you land, Alex? What's the score for Conan the Barbarian, 1982 edition?
I think I'm just going to go dead center C. So in translation, 2.5, maybe 3-star review on Letterboxd. For the issues I have stated, it's a visual feast. And of course, I have to give my props for the practical effects and the effort put into that. But it is not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. What about yourself?
I'm going to go with 2.5. I think that right off the bat, when I was done with the movie, I'm like, this is 2 stars. But, that's not acknowledging the context of it. And there really is something to be said for the amount of work that you can see was put up there on the screen, with the production. Some of it doesn't make sense to me, but I still, when I'm watching it, I think that's one of the things that makes it watchable, that I can see that they put all that work there. 2.5, I don't know what has to happen for me to recommend Conan the Barbarian to someone. Maybe if they're big Schwarzenegger fans and they've never seen it, I'm like, oh, well, he made this movie before the Terminator, and it's going to really make you appreciate his performance, his acting now, because you get to see him before he knew what he was doing. And I think that it's just so funny to see James Earl Jones playing a bad guy with long hair that turns into a snake.
With his piercing eyes.
Yeah. And the voice, he is James Earl Jones still. It almost feels like James Earl Jones is cosplaying as a Conan character. One last time, I really like Sandal Bergman. I thought that she was really good. She sold me on the love story. She sold me on her character. So that would be one of the main reasons why I would recommend it. 2.5 for me. Would you say C-?
Dead center C.
Dead center C for Alex. John, I get the feeling that you have nostalgic attachment to this movie, maybe, and that's why you brought it up. But feel free to confirm or deny that, either on our Patreon chat or on social media. Just let us know.
No one would ever know that my lord's people had lived at all. His was a tale of sorrow.
But that's it. Alex, do you know what we're doing next?
I don't. Lay it on me.
Coming up next, there is no confusion about whether this movie is fresh or not, Alex. 100% tomato meter score for Quantum Cowboys. It's a 2022 animated movie coming to us courtesy of Katie and OT. Full disclosure, 100%, but there's only a handful of reviews. So that's how you game the system. Never heard of it. I just know of this movie because they put it on the list of movies they want us to cover. So get ready.
Interesting.
Animation coming to the Contrarians again.
Hour and a half, so we're good.
Yep. It's somewhat recent, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Ooh, Lily Gladstone.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There you go. So that's coming up next on the main feed. On the Patreon feed, the bonus episode this month is the movie Rounders. Young Matt Damon, young Edward Norton. Malkovich is in there, and John Turturro also. They're not young. They're just their usual selves. I think Martin Landau is in it. So it's a pretty interesting cast. Then as far as video reviews, this month we're doing a dual video review of The Last Showgirls, courtesy of patron Jason Nerdrovert. And then no after hours, Alex, because we're using that time to record the next Fresh Immigrant Rotten Fascist episode, which is going to be on the movie A Face in the Crowd. A movie I haven't seen, but I own the Criterion. So crossing my fingers, it turns out to be good. It has a reputation. It has a Criterion. So, you know, I think that the odds are in our favor. But that's it. Any of that sounds interesting, check out patreon.com/Contrarian Prime, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Take care, y'all. Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of 99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarians sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Corey Ari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
Just for old time's sake, I really don't care who